If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Welcome back to my coverage of the Kristin Smart trial, Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. We're heading into closing arguments for Ruben's jury. And we are in Salinas, California at the Monterey County Courthouse. I'm actually still on vacation in Inyo National Forest. Highly recommend it, by the way, if you've never been. So we're going to start off with the prosecution's closing. So here we go. The prosecution starts off by reviewing details of Kristin's temporary clandestine grave. Mr. Provel went over the testimony again, reminding the jurors about Ed, the contractor, and his small crew and how none of them were injured during construction of the deck. He reviewed Cindy Arrington's testimony and confirmed the hole was dug by hand because there was no mechanical tool marks. The prosecution went over the soil staining evidence and reminded the jurors that stains 2 to 4 feet down in with the soil wouldn't be from plumbing problems. Those would have started from the surface and gone down. And this was within 2 to 4 feet, and then some down from there. He covered the lies and destruction of evidence and how that alone tells you their intent. He points out if you kill someone during commission of a felony, even if the death was unintentional, accidental, or negligent, it's felony murder. Attempted rape of intoxicated persons and their death qualifies as felony murder. Attempt means one step towards commission, and we have so much more than that, is what Provel said. As he continued with the closing for Ruben, he says, based on the Doe witnesses, you can conclude Paul was likely to commit and did rape or attempt to rape Kristin Smart. The 3 things needed for felony murder are: 1, Paul committed a felony. 2, Ruben knew Paul committed a felony. 3, after the felony, Ruben aided in protecting Paul of the consequences. Side note, I think we checked all those boxes, 1, 2, and 3. Moving on. The prosecution asked jurors for accountability, and the only truthful verdict is that Ruben Flores is guilty of being an accessory to murder. The prosecution used the same PowerPoint presentation, hitting on all the same evidence and testimony as he did in Paul's, so that part was almost identical. The prosecution told the jury that Ruben's age can't be a reason to sympathize. He also went on to say that same as Paul's jury, were told that justice delayed doesn't have to be justice denied. Provel said, while hundreds searched for Kristin, Paul and Ruben didn't lift a finger. They lifted their hands, though, to bury a hole. Wow. The prosecution then talked about the phone record showing that Paul called Ruben Sunday morning, May 26 of 1996. He said Paul involved Ruben because he knew his dad would do anything for him. The prosecution pointed out that Ruben's trophy drawer was full of Kristin-related items, dozens of related Kristin material. He also went over all the soil evidence again in detail. Of course, in the timeline, it was reviewed how Paul was basically hunting Kristin for some time and all his actions that night, walking home from the party on Crandall Way. The prosecution's closing arguments for Ruben's jury lasted approximately 2 hours. Now it's Harold Musik's turn to do closing for Ruben, and I'm looking forward to this, actually. Before Mr. Musik even gets started, he asks if the jurors can get a short bathroom break, which of course was granted, so everybody gets their break and they come back, and Musik starts by saying, "Good morning, welcome back." He asked if they got all their questions answered, and do they still have questions. He said he wouldn't be surprised because Kristin is still missing and we don't know what happened to her. He went on to say that this is the longest trial he's ever been involved in. He said they showed up ready to rock and roll each day He called the jurors warriors and said he and his client respect them for that. He said they have the authority to decide what it all means. He says Ruben is innocent. He says Ruben hasn't done a thing, and he's never dug a grave in his whole life. Well, that's good. Side note, because most other people haven't either. Moving on. He says this case screams reasonable doubt. Without a body, he says, they can't be sure that Kristin's even dead. He again says that Kristin could actually be alive. He says Ruben and Paul aren't the demons the prosecution made them out to be. He said Ruben's 81 years old and has never been charged with a crime in his life. Okay, and this part starts pissing me off. Side note. He says Paul was just awkward. He drank, played pool, and he was helpful to Kristin that night. He helped her. He was doing a good deed. Oh, man, I want to crawl out of my skin on that one. And, of course, he continues with more victim blaming. He said Kristin lied. She disappeared frequently. She only had one friend because the other girls thought she was too boy crazy. Side note, that irritates me so much. But we all know defense attorneys always blame the victims somehow. Even if that was all true, it explains nothing in my opinion. He said Kristin was a free spirit and not happy at Cal Poly. Well, this is the most we've ever heard Misek say, and damn is he pissing me off. So now he says that Ruben's a good man. He's a grandpa, a husband, side note, kind of a husband to a wife who has a long-term boyfriend, so however you want to look at that situation. Moving on, he says he's a former police officer, which, side note, yes, he was temporarily a volunteer police officer. He said he's an Elks member. Side note, who gives a hoot? He says he's generous, he's kind. He says he's not evil no matter how they're trying to portray him. My eyes are rolling so far back in my head that it actually hurts. Moving on, Misek talks about Angie, Paul's fiance, and how she was merely shooed away that day from Kristin's grave because she was dressed nice and there was dog poop out there. Gosh. Misek tried to discredit the bloodstain evidence, and even if it is blood, he said, it could be anyone's blood. Okay. He said the fiber evidence was not credible. He said a wrongful conviction is not justice. He asked for a quick verdict to send a message to the state that they don't have sufficient evidence. Here's some details regarding the verdict and expectations and possibilities. Both juries must have a verdict before they can both be read. One could be guilty and the other one not guilty. 12 people on each jury must agree for each independent verdict. Media outlets will receive an email approximately 1 hour before the first verdict is read. Nothing further will happen until both verdicts are read. All parties will be given 40-minute notice, minimum, to return to the courthouse. The verdict will be read back to back. At 1:43 p.m., deliberations officially began. The 3 alternates were asked to stay, just in case. Here are a few more tidbits I found later that I feel are insightful. So Judge O'Keefe, of course, had to read the final jury instructions for Ruben's jury. And then off they went to the deliberation room. If they do need to use any alternates, they will be chosen randomly. I hope Paul's jurors that got called before the judge multiple times can remain professional and not get distracted. It seems like they may have issues with each other. I'm holding my thoughts on all that because I'm not physically there and I could be misreading the situation. Ruben ended up waiving his right to be present for anything further, short of the reading of the verdict. The judge accepted his waiver. They will deliberate each regular court day until the verdict is reached. The verdict will not be broadcast, as we already know, but it won't even be recorded for future viewing. That's a bummer. Hopefully they have a real good pool photographer there that day so that we can at least gauge some reactions and see some photographs as this all goes down. Chris Lambert and other media members plan to remain very close to the courthouse indefinitely until the verdict is read. All right, it's now Thursday, October 6th, 2022, and the deliberations are continuing. which I don't like. I was hoping they'd get to a quicker verdict. But I did see this today. Chris Lambert posted it, and it literally made me cry. He tweeted it, I'm sorry. We all know purple is Kristin's favorite color, of course. And the P for Polly is now purple. It was done for dating violence action on campuses, for safer campuses against sexual assault, intimate partner violence, and domestic violence. And most of you know, in 1998, Kristin herself has a Campus Safety Act named in her honor. It mandates reporting by college police to the local authorities. Cal Poly police took nearly a month to turn Kristin's case over to the sheriff's department. For me, purple is for Kristin in more ways than one. So that beautiful P on the hillside in our local area reminds me that we will never forget her. Many of us locals are anxiously waiting for the verdict. Locals are using words like hope, closure, resolution. We all want her found more than anything is the common thread. Some of you probably remember Funky Baloo. He's a local attorney. He's been in some of my other episodes. He mentions the waiting game for the competing counsels. He talks about there's no more attorneys can do at that point. It's like your function as a lawyer has disappeared. He explains it is a feeling of being completely powerless. Funky also says there's no set time frame for how long or short the verdict takes. If the jury takes a while, competing counsels may ask the court if they can ask the jury about their deliberations. Well, it's 7:30 p.m. on October 6th, Thursday, and of course there was no verdict today. I don't know about you all, but I am on pins and needles. And I can't help but wonder, will we ever see these jurors' faces? I know a lot of times after a trial's over, the jurors will come out and speak on their feelings and their experience, etc. Some of them even write books. I would definitely buy the book if any of them decided to write it. As always, justice for Kristin Denise Smart.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix, but I still